This hearing will conduct oversight over the enhancement due to the Obama administration's nuclear deal of Iran's current capabilities to project power by reviewing Iran's own military arsenal as well as its financing, training, and army of proxy groups throughout the Middle East. The hearing will also examine how the U.S. should be prepared to defend its national security interests in the Middle East and at home against Iran's advancement in power projection as a result of sanctions relief. It has been reported that Iran's defense budget makes up one-third of its national $300 billion budget. If these estimates are accurate, an influx of $100 billion due to sanctions relief would increase Iran's single-year budget by a third, providing it with substantially increased financial resources to further its foreign policy agenda. It is well known that Iran projects power in the Middle East through the funding of foreign terrorist organizations, hostile governments, and political activist movements, and by arming militant groups and offering training facilities. Iran has long been a supporter of the Lebanese group Hezbollah, the, quote, vanguard of resistance to Israel, end quote. Hezbollah is perhaps Iran's most effective terrorist organization within the region and, of course, was responsible for killing more than 240 Americans at the Marine Corps barracks in Beirut in 1983. With Iran's financial and military assistance, Hezbollah has become a prominent influence in Lebanese politics. The State Department estimates that Iran has given Hezbollah hundreds of millions of dollars and trained thousands of Hezbollah troops at Iranian training facilities. In 2014, the U.S. intelligence community worldwide threat assessment argued that Hezbollah has, quote, increased its global terrorist activity in recent years to a level that we have not seen since the 1990s, end quote. Further Iranian funding of Hezbollah would be, of course, of serious concern to the U.S. Our allies has also consistently received funds, weapons, and training from Iran. And people talk about Iran being a Shiite power. They're absolutely willing to arm Sunni groups like Hamas. And then when you have decent Shiite governments like in Azerbaijan, Iran is opposed to that. Iran has frequently assisted Shiite militias and terrorists in Iraq, Bahrain, and Yemen. For these reasons, Iran has been designated by the State Department as a state sponsor of terrorism since 1984. Iran is maintaining and expanding an advanced ballistic and cruise missile program that poses a threat to U.S. forces, interests, and allies in the Gulf region and beyond. The recently signed nuclear accord does not limit Iran's ability to continue to develop its ballistic and cruise missile programs. The potential influx of funding as a result of sanction relief may facilitate the advancement of Iran's ballistic and cruise missile programs, which will result in Iran posing an even more lethal threat to the United States and our allied assets in the region. Our military leaders understand the threat posed by Iran. During his confirmation hearing in July for JCS Chairman, Marine Corps General Joe Dunford said, quote, "My expectation is that regardless of there being an agreement or not, Iran will continue to be a malign force and influence across the region," end quote. Retired Marine Corps General Jim Jones further elaborated on this threat during testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing last month. He said, in quote, "It is a regime that artfully dodges its commitments, generates international friction to exert greater domestic control on its citizens, constantly hardens its grip on the country. The mullah's government seriously violates human rights, UN Security Council resolutions, and international law. They reject the right of Israel to exist by opposing and actively undermining the Middle East peace process. And Tehran remains the chief antagonist of democracy and liberalization across the Middle East, where a better future for millions of people struggles to emerge. Its goal is the consolidation of the revolution, which is martially enforced at home by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and prosecuted abroad by the Quds Force and Iran's many proxy groups," end quote. And I think it's worth pointing out that under the agreement with the Obama administration, the international sanctions on the Quds Force are actually lifted. Sanctions relief will exacerbate Iran's ability to pursue a nefarious foreign policy agenda. Israeli officials have warned that Tehran will direct billions of dollars it will reap from the end of economic sanctions toward its anti-Israel proxies in the region. Iranian officials often call for Israel's destruction. Short of that, proxy forces like Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad provide Tehran with a shield against a possible Israeli military strike on its nuclear program. And I would note today, in the Wall Street Journal, we have on the front page, Iranian hacking surges in the U.S. And so here you have an agreement. We claim that Iran is going to start to change its ways, and we're going to They're not going to have a military use of nuclear energy, but yet how are they responding to that? They're hacking inside the United States. So Iran's foreign policy will remain at odds with U.S. interests. And so with this understanding, we must turn to the task of protecting U.S. national security issues and the job of standing by our closest allies in the region. And so we are delighted to have such a great group of witnesses here for our hearing, and I will recognize them in a minute. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize the ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security, Mr. Lynch, for his opening statement.
Thank